Tonight, a special Ask Them Yourself episode of Pop Goes the Culture. For an embarrassing 33 years, he was a member of the usual gang of idiots at Mad Magazine, churning out a steady stream of pointed political satire and pure silliness. Until recently, as Mad senior editor, his job included making funny noises in the hallway, which isn't a problem, he insists. Quote, "Since I work at the only place in America where if you mature, you get fired." Unquote. As a performer, he appears around the country in The Joy of Censorship, his unacclaimed First Amendment lecture program. As a producer, since 1981, he has been the driving force behind the Theater Within's annual John Lennon tribute charity concert in New York City, the only Lennon tribute concert in North America or Europe officially sanctioned by Yoko Ono. He's Joe Raiola, and tonight you have the opportunity to talk to him face-to-face by logging in at AskThemYourself.com. I'm David Levin, and this is Ask Them Yourself. Hello and welcome to Ask Them Yourself. I'm David Levin, and I'm here today with my guest, Joe Raiola, former editor of Mad Magazine, and we're going to spend the next, 20 minutes or so talking and just getting to know Joe a little bit. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Dave? Good to see you.
Good to be seen. Welcome aboard. So, Joe, you were at Mad Magazine for 33 years. Is that correct?
That is correct, Dave. My career at Mad ended after 33 years, just as Jesus's life ended after 33 years, and I think the similarity is clear.
Yeah, pretty much. Did you start out wanting to work at Mad Magazine? I mean, how did you end up at Mad Magazine?
Well, how I found my way to Mad was, in a way, kind of a marvelous coincidence. Back in 1984, a long time ago, I think I saw an ad in the Village Voice, or maybe it was the New York Times, I'm not sure, and my buddy Charlie Cadu, my writing partner, saw the ad in the other place. One of us saw it in the Times, one of us saw it in the Voice, and Mad was looking for writers at the time, and we just started submitting stuff, and Mad was desperate enough to actually buy stuff from us, so that's how we started. We started out as writers for Mad, and Al Feldstein, who had been the editor for 28 years, was retiring around then, and Charlie and I were hired essentially to replace Al, and that's how we found our way to Mad.
Did you grow up reading Mad? I mean, what was it like going there for the first time and meeting Bill Gaines and some of the other guys at Mad Magazine?
Well, two different questions there. I did grow up reading Mad. I think Mad was one of the first things I probably ever loved to read. I especially loved the Frank Jacobs wrote song parodies for Mad for a long time, and I loved Frank's stuff. I remember off we go into the lunchroom yonder, shoving girls out of the way. Forward boys, move on down that counter. Hurry up, fill the tray. Try the beans, they're prepared last Friday, and the meat is tough as a mule. The bread's got mold, the soup is called yuck. Anything beats the lunchroom at our school. And I didn't memorize it for tonight, Dave. I still remember it from when I was 7 or 8 years old when I first read that. So I loved Mad as a kid. Read it for many years. Never had any interest in working for Mad. And in fact, my first professional work in comedy with my pal Charlie was not with Mad. It was actually with National Lampoon alumni. Completely different voice, completely different style of humor. Before we ever wrote for Mad. So that we ended up at Mad together was kind of a complete surprise. I don't think it's anything we expected.
What did you want to do growing up?
Well, most kids in my class, I remember in sixth grade, we had a yearbook, and you had to say what you wanted to be when you grew up. And most boys had things like cowboy or astronaut or race car driver or president. For me, it was comedian. I knew even then that's what I wanted to be because I really didn't excel much as a student in those days, except eating pencils and sticking quarters up my nose. And I thought It'd be a nice way to make a living. So that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything serious. I certainly didn't want to learn anything. So being a comedian seemed like a good career path for me.
And you're also a performer, right? You do a lot of shows. You didn't just sit at Mad all the time. What were you doing out on the road? You were doing shows like Joy of Censorship and Almost Obscene. Tell me about that.
Well, I was a failed stand-up basically. Um, Charlie and I had a comedy duo called the Chowder Brothers, and then I performed for myself for a while. But I never mastered the stand-up world, and I had done a show that I liked very much called Confessions of an Ex Stand-Up, and some people from HBO came to see it, and it was clear that my career as a performer was going nowhere. And one day I was at the Mad office, and a call came in. It just happened to be routed to me, and they were looking for a speaker. Mad at the time, I was told Mad was the most stolen publication from the children's section, the teen section at the library, and they wanted someone from Mad to come and speak. And I said, well, I don't know if I can help you. And they said, well, it pays $400. And I said, I'll be there. Um, so I gave a talk to librarians, essentially, and the librarians loved me. They liked me, and I didn't work hard for it. I just spoke for an hour, pretty much said whatever came to my mind, and they gave me a lot of applause, and they paid me, and I thought, librarians. There's a market here. What do librarians care about? Censorship. You know what? I'll do a show on censorship. So I created marketing materials for this show called Joy of Censorship. I had no idea what it was, but I started sending them out, and people started calling me and asking me to do this show that didn't exist. And before I knew it, I was on the road. I had to create a show about censorship, and I did. And the truth is, at the time, I was woefully ignorant about Mad's history, about how Mad was part of EC Comics and almost put out of business during the McCarthy era and the Red Thread. I really was very ignorant of that history, but I learned it. And I realized I was quite passionate about this. And, all these years later, I've done the show now in 44 states with 6 to go. And man, those 6 states, let me tell you.
Which are the 6 states?
Um, Louisiana, Wyoming, New Mexico, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Hawaii. There you go. I mentioned them all.
We got a lot of viewers. We got a lot of viewers in New Mexico, so maybe this will turn the tide.
But I've done the show in Mississippi.
Okay.
I've done the show.
How do they react? How do they react down there?
A bunch of people walked out on me.
Did they really?
Oh yeah. A bunch of people walked out on me during the show. I remember that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I've been in Mississippi, done the show in West Virginia, Oklahoma, places where what do they say about Oklahoma? We don't appreciate that man's kind of humor, except those who did. So that's fine. Hopefully, I'll get to those other 6 states.
And Joe, you also have over the years done something that you're really passionate about, which at one time was out of your wheelhouse, but you have been doing the annual tribute to John Lennon since 5 minutes after he passed away, I think. Is that true?
Well, not quite 5 minutes, but as you know, I was there that night at the Dakota after John was so senselessly taken from us. I was there that night, and I was impacted by that deeply. And we produced, when I say we, I mean it was the Theater Within workshop at the time. We produced the first John Lennon tribute in New York in the summer of 1981, and it's grown over the years since then to this little workshop production to what it is now, which is the longest running, and I'm going to say the best John Lennon tribute in the world. And I am really proud of it because we've had great artists over the years. Patti Smith last year and Donovan the year before that. And we have this annual John Lennon Real Love Award that we've been giving now. We've given 4 of them so far, and we'll give the 5th this year. And the show will be at Symphony Space on November 30th. So yeah, celebrating Lennon in New York is a big deal. John is still loved in this city, and it's been one of the great joys of my life to be the driving force behind his charity concert for all these years, 38 years.
You've had some amazing people come out to do the concerts, haven't you?
Yeah, Jackson Brown, Cyndi Lauper, Roseanne Cash done the show. Joan Osborne has played it many years. Benny King gave his last live performance in New York at the I believe it was the 2015
Yeah.
at the 35th annual John Lennon tribute. So we get major talent.
That you can actually find that performance online of uh, Benny King singing his Immortal Stand By Me, and then a bunch of people come on stage, you included, and
Yeah.
Buster Poindexter and some
Joan
other-
Osborne part of that. Marshall Crenshaw, Amy Helm. It's a great one. It's a great performance. Maybe it's hard to pick a favorite moment, but maybe in 38 years of Lennon tributes, or 37 actually, that is no moment I love more than that. When Benny King did that, I tried to get Chuck Berry to do the Lennon tribute years ago, but I wanted to get those guys, those guys that Lennon and the Beatles loved, and luckily I was able to connect with Benny King before he passed away.
I'm going to show a little bit of video that you and I worked on together a couple of years ago that basically shows where the Lennon tribute sort of started. And then we've got a phone call or a Skype call coming in a little bit. And when we come back, we will take that call. So let's take a look at this.
You had me, but I never had you. You don't find events like this in New York much anymore, or on this level. I'm a big fan of Richard Barone and Maura Kennedy, and especially Roseanne Cash.
When I wake up early in the morning, I lift my head, and I'm still yawning.
Yoko did not find out about this event until its 24th year. I think that what Yoko liked was that she could tell immediately and intuitively that this was a grassroots event, that this was not an event about capitalizing on John or exploiting John in any way, that this was an event produced and staged by people who loved John and were doing something that not only remembered him and honored him, but was in the truest Lennon spirit, something that was for a cause bigger than us. The musicians, they intuitively get it. John Lennon is the headliner.
I was president of my Beatles fan club when I was 11 years old.
It's your turn.
And there we go, John Lennon.
That was a long time ago, actually. That was 2008. I remember that show. That was at the Ailey Citigroup Theater, and it was the last year that the tribute was not a house band show. We didn't have a house band in those days.
Yeah.
But since 2009, the tribute is really, it's changed a lot since then. It's a bigger production now, a more complicated production, but it's also a better production. And
Rich
it's
Pagano
grown
helped
a
out
lot.
a lot with that, didn't he? Rich Pagano of Fab Four.
Say that again?
Rich Pagano from Fab Four helped out a lot.
Oh yeah, Rich is a great talent, and the next year he became the musical director of the tribute, and he's been the musical director ever since.
It's amazing.
Wow.
All right, so Joe, we're going to take another look at some other stuff that you've done. So let's take a second and look and see what else you've done. You've worked on Joy of Censorship. We're going to take a look at that next. back in the day.
It feels kind of quaint now, actually, in an age where you've got Trump saying, "I love the First Amendment. Nobody loves it better than me," and it's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want. The Joy of Censorship 2013 was really quaint. We have a president now who says that the news media is the enemy of the American people. He actually tweeted that network news has become so partisan, distorted, and fake that licenses must be challenged. So actually, I haven't done the show since Trump was elected. We're going to get back on the road later in the year, and I'm excited about that to get back out there with the First Amendment show in the era of Trump.
How do you think that's going to change?
Well, it'll be an angrier show, and it'll be a more absurd show because Trump himself is an absurd individual in every respect. But it's not just about Trump. We have this issue in the comedy world in a big way. Like, I'm waiting. Is Kathy Griffin out of business for making a bad joke? Is she never going to work again ever for that one image? If so, then the comedy world is really in crisis. We need to keep things in perspective. In my lifetime, Lenny Bruce was arrested 7 times in 4 cities. He was handcuffed.
Yeah.
He was taken to jail for using the word schmuck. Okay?
Well,
He was
it's a curse word. It is a curse word in Yiddish.
He was arrested for saying balls. So, it's not good that we haven't heard from Kathy Griffin since that incident. And it speaks to a real problem in show business.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to a problem that liberals haven't confronted yet. I didn't think Kathy Griffin made a good joke, but I don't think she should lose a career over it.
So after all this time, what is it like sort of now? For those people who don't know, Mad Magazine has moved out of New York City, having been here since the mid-1950s when it was started, and has now moved to Burbank, California, along with DC Comics, which is now near the Warner Brothers lot, I take it. And so they wanted to bring everything in-house, and most of the Mad staff, with the exception of one person, remained here. But since the magazine was there was no more magazine for you to work on here.
Mad moved to Burbank, and we didn't. We were invited to go, but we said no. We said no because think about how that rolled off your tongue while you were saying it. Mad Magazine out of Burbank certainly doesn't sound right to us, and the current Mad staff. The fact of the matter is, the current Mad staff was never moving to Burbank because it just simply wasn't in our DNA. So, Mad's coming out of Burbank now with a new team of editors, and we wish them well, of course, but it's a whole new team with none of the editorial people who were really driving the Mad voice over the years involved in it anymore. Some of the freelance writers and some of the artists will remain on board, I'm sure, but that talent won't be working with us anymore.
Got it.
It was 33 years. It was a great run, as I like to say. Our Mad career ended after 33 years, just as Jesus's life did, and obviously the similarities are many. And now Mad gets to be reborn with a whole new team. And one thing I can tell you about that new team with certainty, and I can say this with absolute certitude, they are not having as much fun as we did. They can't. It's impossible for them to enjoy themselves the way we did because they're under tremendous pressure. They're in an impossible situation, and of course they don't have the comedy lineage that we did. They don't have the direct gains transmission They don't have any of that, and that what comes with it. So Mad may be successful, but I don't envy those guys out there now because they got a really tough task.
Indeed, indeed, and of course they didn't have someone with the job that you did, which was.
Well, I said to you before, I bet you anything they don't have anyone who's in charge of making funny noises in the hallway. I'm guessing that they don't have an editor on staff now who makes it a point to do comedy material to the security guards before they come into the building. I'm. How could it not be less fun without me? I mean, it's got to be relentlessly silly. Listen. I approached Mad. Charlie can speak for himself on this, but I approached Mad kind of like performance art, and the show began for me when I walked in the building. That's when I always did some kind of shtick for the security guards, and security guards are a great audience because they can't leave. They have to stay there. It's their job, and they kind of have to be nice to you as well because you're a tenant of the building. So I would always start with shtick every day, and I would leave with something every day. It was silliness for me from the start of the day until the end, and it's one of the reasons I'm unqualified to do anything now. I'm not likely to find employment because really what my job was being silly, and there are not many places where they'll actually pay you for doing that.
Well, I'm glad you could come on here and be a little silly with us, even though I'm not paying you to do it. Joe, you have tried some new things recently. I'm going to just share with our audience some things that you have shared with some of your followers on Facebook. And if you would walk us through some of that stuff, I'd appreciate it. Just give me a second. I'll call them up right now.
Well, I've not been able to find work in comedy. I mean, it's very rare to have a run of 33 years of continuous work in the comedy world, and I've not been able to find any work since since I left Mad in comedy. So I'm taking whatever jobs come my way, and my first one was as a bathroom attendant at
How'd that go?
I was only there a day, and this was a very slow bathroom. In fact, the person who took this photo of me was the only person who visited the bathroom during my 6-hour shift. So tips were low, and I only worked there for one night.
Okay, how about this?
Oh, I auditioned. I didn't get this job. I auditioned as a pyrotechnic stuntman. And the feeling was that while I wore the firewall, that my facial expressions weren't quite working. Seemed to be I wasn't showing the prerequisite agony that goes with something like this.
You look pretty happy, actually.
I did. That's why I didn't get the job, I think.
Well, it's good that you can smile through your pain. I think that's your training as a comedian.
Yeah, I didn't fake it enough. I mean, obviously the flames aren't hurting me.
I bet here.
This was actually, I admit, this was a fake. I admit it. This was just the idea here was I was a ballerina, but this was actually not a real job. This was something that I put up for. I put this up for laughs, and I think I got 3 likes on my Facebook feed. So then there's another. Oh yeah, this is a real thing, actually. I worked for 2 days as a jetpack tester for the Acme Jetpack Corporation.
Acme.
And
I hear good things.
Yeah, I never actually launched. That's the thing. I never actually. They had all kinds of technical problems, but I never actually flew. But this was a fun job. But after it was just a per diem thing, and it ended after a couple of days.
Okay, but you did some other work inside.
How many of these are we gonna do? We gonna?
I got a bunch. but
I
we
mean,
don't have to do them. They're pretty much pretty
I-
straightforward.
This was just a day. I through a friend of mine, I got a job working for a secret government project, a federal project, and I didn't really have a feel for this, and I was fired. No pun.
Okay, thank you for doing that, Joe. Okay, anything you guys want to plug? I'm sure you have tons of stuff you want to plug.
I'm looking for work. If anybody has a job, I'm open for anything. Really, I'm unemployed. I've got time on my hands. I'm sincere, and I'm eager, and I need money. So, really, anyone contact me on Facebook. Offer me a position. Doesn't have to be in comedy, plastics. I'm available.
So thank you very much, Joe Raiola, former senior editor at Mad Magazine, and I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do next. And to all our viewers, thank you for tuning in. And till next time, you can ask them yourself right here, because I don't want to do any more talking. I don't want to work. I'd rather have you ask all the questions. So join us next time.